Following the success of last year's event, this year's Tour of Britain has been extended to 6 stages over 6 days. It starts in Scotland, right here in a rather windy Glasgow, where there are 96 riders from all over the world representing 16 teams. The Tour of Britain was revived last year and has big ambitions to become part of the prestigious elite Pro Tour circuit, which includes the likes of the Tour de France. It has attracted some top riders this year. Look out for Australia's Michael Rogers, world time trial champion, German classic star Stefan Wessemann riding in the T-Mobile team, and leading a strong British lineup, road specialist Roger Hammond. From Glasgow, the route covers almost 480 racing miles to the finish in London. Stage 1 is all in Scotland, with the finish in Castle Douglas. From Carlisle, Stage 2 travels over Shap Fell to a finish in the shadow of Blackpool Tower. Next, the riders have to climb Home Moss and Snake Pass on their way to Sheffield. Then it's Buxton to Nottingham before what could be a decisive time trial in the city of Birmingham. From there, it's down to London and the showpiece finale on the streets of Westminster.
And along the way, I'll be going behind the scenes to uncover the secrets and tactics of cycle racing. Now, unlike the Tour de France, where teams are made up of 9 riders, in the Tour of Britain, there's only 6, with one man being designated as team leader. Take, for example, the Quick-Step team. The current world champion, Michael Rogers, will be protected by his 5 teammates. They'll drop back to get him water, they'll protect him from the wind. If he has a flat, one of his teammates will drop back with him and pull him up to the peloton. But with such a small team, the tactics of the race may not pan out like this. Someone from the ranks may get ahead down the road and take over the mantle of team leader.
The opening stage, starting in Glasgow, is over 114 miles with a tough climb on the run-in to Castle Douglas. Your commentators are the former Olympic champion and Tour de France rider Chris Boardman and Hugh Poulter, who himself won Commonwealth gold in 1966.
Thank you, Jill. This is the first year of the 3 that the Tour of Britain will be visiting Scotland, and it all fits in for the city's bid to host the 2014 Commonwealth Games.
We're about attracting and sustaining events to Scotland of an international level, building economic impact for the country and also attracting more visitors and tourists. And our major aim is to ensure that Scotland's one of the foremost event destinations by 2015.
So there's a carnival atmosphere here in the famous George Square in the heart of Glasgow as the riders prepare for the start. Patricia Ferguson, Minister for Tourism, Culture and Sport, drops the sole tyre to send the riders away. And ahead of them there is a very tough stage indeed. They've got to negotiate some open moorlands, and there's some bleak conditions out there with a very strong blustery wind coming from the right.
Well, I think that wind could be very, very difficult for the riders. Crosswinds are the most feared of all conditions in the professional peloton. It makes it very, very difficult and dangerous. Indeed, it's probably worse than riding in the rain.
Well, all friends at the moment as they just dance their way up this little climb to the edge of the city, but immediately that flag is drawn in, then the race will be on. A bit of chat going on in the peloton, but now, as you can see, we are on to the open moorlands, and already look, the long thin line here as riders grovel to stay in the wheel.
Well, we think the professional teams from the continent are taking advantage of these strong crosswinds, as we thought might happen, and they're driving the race. If you imagine the wind is coming from the side, that means each rider has to put the man in front between them and that wind, and there's only so much space from curb to curb, and it forces breaks to happen in the bunch.
45 seconds the advantage then for the 42 riders that have given these the slip. And right on the front, a squad of the recycling.co.uk team are trying to stretch out the pace of the bunch. The national champion was there, that was Russell Downing, but he's suffering with a knee problem, and you can see he's now in the middle of the main field.
Well, they've been badly caught out there, and there's only a small amount of them to chase this very, very large, well, it's almost part of the peloton, and if the pressure stays on at the front, it'll be nearly impossible to bring back. An awful lot of work to close that gap.
This is the first sprint at Cumnock, and it looks like the Spanish competitor here, Chero Molina, was first over the line, so he'll pick up a handy 5 points in that competition, and 3 seconds. Tom Southam, Great Britain, finishing in 2nd place, and Blaudsen, the Dane on the CSC team, 3rd.
Again, Wales also caught out a bit there. They've got their work to do.
So the Bridgestone team are chasing close order here. They're all looking back anxiously, but nobody really wants to contribute. 1 minute and 30 seconds now the advantage, so the peloton are really going to have to lift the tempo if they want to get on terms.
Well, there are a few passengers in that group, but the big professional teams, the likes of Quick-Step, know that this is a big possibility for them to take this race by the throat and get control on day one, and they're making every possible effort to keep that lead all the way to the finish.
Well, the riders are getting near to the second sprint at Kirkconnell now, and right on the front here the Quick-Step team are beginning to get themselves organised. Baumann on the far right from the T-Mobile team looks as though he's going to snap this one up. He gets the 5 points, and in second place it was Chero Molina of Spain, and there's a lot of anger being shown here. Why is that, Chris?
Well, I think he just wavered slightly just as he came through, and Nguyen seems to feel that it actually impeded his sprint, but to be honest, it was in the final 5 metres and it certainly wasn't intentional.
But Nguyen's third spot there gives him 1 second, and that might be useful when we get to the finish in Castle Douglas.
Well, everyone seems to have settled into a long, hard day. We can see the riders in a single line there, which gives you an idea of the kind of pace they are travelling at. This gap is still hovering around about 65 seconds, and they've got to close it soon. What often happens in this situation is the bunch relaxes for a second, that gap shoots up, and then everybody loses the impetus to chase. They can't let this happen at this stage in the race.
Well, they're heading on to Drumlanrig Castle now, historic landmark, and on the front it's still the recycling.co.uk team trying to whip the pace up. Rob Hales is there, World Team Pursuit champion and World Marathon champion, but in cycling parlance they say surely the elastic is going to snap soon, and if it does snap, this could be the crucial move of the race.
Well, the effect of the crosswinds has been dramatically diminished now. They are inside these forested roads, and that gives them a lot of protection, which is fortunate because they're small roads, great surface. I've ridden a lot around here myself, but now it's just literally a time trial to see who it is that gives up first. And I have to say my money would be on the big professional teams because they're very experienced and they know how this works.
Well, the feeding station is ahead. Feeding stations are always dangerous. This is when the riders grab musettes to pick up food, and they put the food in the back pockets, and you need to be vigilant through there because if you touch a helper or a wheel you can crash quite easily. It's the long straight that will take them to the castle, and that is where the feeding zone starts. Here they are picking up the musettes. You will see the riders, as you see, taking food out and popping it into the back pocket to help them for the rest of the stage.
Well, this is like a voluntary neutralised section that all riders obey. They need to take on the fuel, but the hammer will go back down as soon as they come out of this section.
And I think we can join Jill, who's right there in front of the castle.
It was entirely appropriate that the tour should pass through the grounds of Drumlanrig Castle. Built for William Douglas, the first Duke of Queensberry in the 17th century, it not only houses a magnificent art collection, but is also home to the Scottish Bicycle Museum. Here you can see how the bicycle evolved. There are conflicting claims as to the very earliest model, but there's no doubt that the first pedal-powered bicycle was built here in Dumfriesshire by a local blacksmith, Kirkpatrick Macmillan, in the 1830s. Well, this is Macmillan's invention, and he reportedly rode it from near Drumlanrig to Glasgow, where he caused such a sensation he was involved in the first ever cycle-related traffic accident. Well, how things have changed since the days of Macmillan's prototype. These days, cycling is a high-tech business. I wonder what the blacksmith would have made of today's tour.
And it's not just the bikes that are high-tech. The team cars are packed full of technology. This is effectively the mobile office of the team managers. They will drive behind the peloton, or if they have a rider clear, then following that breakaway group. For example, John Herity, manager of the British team, can have radio conversations with his riders, receive information from the tour radio and plan the next move.
John to Roger, get the boys to work now. John to Roger, get the boys to work now. But they've got to ride hard and they've got to do it now. They've got to do it in the next 10 kilometres. Ride hard now, really hard, do it now.
It's also where his riders will take drinks bottles and come to if they have a mechanical problem. Then it's up to the mechanic, generally sat in the back, to leap into action.
3 cars to go, 3 cars to go, come on.
Well, there's the beautiful coast here, the Solway coast, and that was Kieran Page actually taking a wheel change, and he has actually regained the front group. Well, these are the foot slopes of the final climb of Craignair, and it's about 5 miles from the finish, so surely this is going to be a perfect platform for somebody to try and launch a winning move.
Well, we have had some indication that the bunch has in fact given up the chase, and if we have that confirmed, that is the case, then that means the battle for the overall will be decided by this group, which is incredible, something like that to happen on the very first stage. Now what's going to happen is a lot of tactical riding to see if anybody can take full advantage of this position, and indeed it has been confirmed 10.5 minutes with still some racing to go. I feel this final climb will have impact on the general classification.
Well, it's a massive group that's gone clear, and this is Kieran Page, and it looks as though he's finally losing contact with the group. He's struggling, and now this front collection of riders are beginning to fragment, and these are the strong men that are coming to the head.
Well, we're going to see now who is causing the damage here. And we can see there's a lot of the professional riders have decided that yes, this is the time to do it. We can really make this race decided on day one if we just make the most of this final climb.
Well, that was Verschellen of the Chocolat Jacques team, one of 4 Division 1 squads that are over here for this Tour of Britain race. And the long twisting climb here is certainly going to find those out who've got the strength for ideas of victory in Castle Douglas.
For Kieran Page there, who had fought to get into this group, got himself in a great position and punctured at such an inopportune moment.
And of course the sad news for the Great Britain team is that the leader, Roger Hammond, is marooned in that group at the back, who I understand have now sat up and they are riding to the finish at pedestrian pace, so they're going to lose an awful lot of time.
Well, we can see Michael Bladson on the front there, and he's keen to get a move going. He knows that they're running out of climb. There's only a few hundred metres more, and he's done so much damage on this small climb already. He wants to capitalise on that, and he's desperate for somebody else to counter and help him fracture this group and get it down to a manageable size.
Looks like Jeremy Hunt's up there as well, British rider, so that's good. Now here goes Nick Noyens. He was a powerful man in the event last year. Noyens takes the 4 points, first over the top of the mountain, and Bludson is second. So these are the strong men.
Well, he's sensed that not only can he get a King of the Mountains points here, he can actually make an impact in the overall. He knows there's only a few kilometres to go. He knows there's not full teams behind to chase him, so if he can get a small gap, it is possible that he could sustain it all the way in.
But per Kieran Page, he's finally capitulated. Now he's going to have to pedal all the way to the finish on his own.
Come on, on the cars, come on. Hurry.
John Herity, former professional and British champion, trying to give Page some encouragement, but I think he's a spent force back to the front. Now this is where the action is.
I think a lot of the riders are often caught out by the kinds of climb that we have in the UK. We have very short, sharp climbs, and it's often very different to what we see on the continent. But certainly the Belgian riders, and certainly Bladson here, no stranger to these climbs. He's been here before. He knows that he can make use of this, and he's just not going to give in.
So Bladson it is, going ahead and in a determined mood. Nick Noyens sees the danger and comes across the gap. Now if these two can break clear, this is going to be the key move in the closing stages.
Well, I could just see behind there the other riders starting to look at each other, and that is the danger. Just a second's hesitation where they say, well, I'm not going to chase, or I'm not going to figure at the finish, and there's the gap, it appears. And on these small roads, which we were just talking about, you can very quickly be out of sight and of course out of mind.
So these two strong riders who know each other very, very well, they ride in all the events in Europe, beginning to knit together neatly and start to tap the rhythm out. They'll share the workload, and both riders obviously have a lot of respect for each other, and this gap is starting to grow. Bludson on the front, the Danish time trial champion, looking very good.
Well, they've committed themselves, and again, this is the sign of their own experience. Very, very good riders, already had a long, hard year, but you can see their legs in great shape, and they're up for this. They know that they have to team up. They can't think about the win at the moment. They just have to think about this breakaway, make it work, and once it's established, well, then they can turn their attention to the finish line.
Well, of course, Noyens has got a very strong ally in that group that they're riding away from, and that is the world time trial champion Rogers. So should these two get pulled back, then Rogers, of course, would counter immediately.
Well, complete commitment here. They know that this could be a race-winning move. It could even affect the overall classification, not just the stage. So they're going to make the absolute most of this. Both of them, I would say, have worked harder and attacked more than any of the other riders in that large group. And I have to say, I think they deserve to be here.
Well, Nick Noyens is probably the better of the sprinters here out of these two, so Bludson will have to try and work something out tactically to try and outsmart him.
Well, they're both assured something on the to gain a place in the overall classification, at least first or second, so they know that whatever happens they're going to get a reward for this work, and they sense the finish now is only a few kilometres away, so they really are going to make the most of this move.
So the two strong teams, that's CSC and a Quick Step, as you say, Chris, have made the move and at the right time. They're approaching the little kink in the road and the turn that'll line them up for the long finishing straight. It's uphill all the way in King Street. Good crowd as well gathering there. 1 kilometre to go, 1,000 metres remaining, and Bludson on the front really begin to turn that big gear.
Well, Nick Noyens is looking behind to see what that gap is, and he's weighing up his own options. At what point do I start to think about the stage win? I must say that Bludson seems to be doing the majority of the work now, and only a few hundred metres to go. Whoever's at the back when the sprint starts is going to have the advantage.
So Bludson, you just saw the elbow flick there. Of course, that is the professional signal to indicate that he's done his turn and he wants the rider to come through. And the road's just a little greasy. There's been a shower in the finishing area, but it's not going to cause any danger. Now they're heading towards this little elbow, and then it'll line them up for the finish.
Noyens, you can see, just doing a shorter turn, perhaps not quite as hard, and he's already started to think about the finish. He's forced Bludson to the front, he's played poker, he's got him to the front just as they're coming up to the sprint.
It's a long finishing straight, so you've got to time your effort to perfection. And Noyens, he's obviously unhappy. He keeps looking back. He doesn't want to make the mistake of being caught cold with somebody bridging the gap in the closing stages. Jeremy Hunt, the British rider, is placed well, second in that peloton, and he has got an excellent chance, of course, of a high place. Bludson it is, still on the front, not the best position. Look for Noyens, he's gathering himself, he'll select the right gear, and then he'll try to surprise the Dane, who really is working hard as he pulls and tugs on those bars. Here goes Noyens now, the Belgian beginning to unload, and he leaves Bludson, the Dane, behind. Superb move here by the Belgian. He's going to tidy up this first stage. Coming up to the line, that's a decisive move by Nick Noyens, who will raise his arms with a victory salute. It's quite customary, and so Noyens takes the first stage, Bludson second, and a good sprint for third, and that was Jeremy Hunt coming over the line in third position. So fine finish there for Noyens and the Quick Step team. He's a chance to see the closing stages again. Noyens, well, he made his move perfectly to take the victory.
And there is confirmation. Nick Noyens takes stage 1 by 2 seconds from Denmark's Michael Bludson. Jeremy Hunt of the Mr Bookmaker team was the leading British rider in third. Kieran Page finished 33rd, 3 minutes 52 seconds down and suffering. 22 minutes and 28 seconds after Noyens' victory came the main field, led home by Scotland's Evan Oliphant, and this group included a very disappointed Roger Hammond. So the first yellow jersey of the tour is presented to the 25-year-old Belgian Nick Noyens by Andrew Campbell, the convener of Dumfries and Galloway Council. When all the day's time bonuses are taken into account, Noyens has a 7-second lead over Bludson. 3 British riders are in the top 10: Jeremy Hunt, Janto Barker and Tom Southam.